So welcome to the March 23rd, 2022 Parma City School Board of Education work session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. Ms. Nucio.
Mrs. Bratz.
Present.
Mrs. Carpus.
Present.
Mr. Price.
Present.
Mr. Ruda.
Present.
Mr. Vaughn.
Present. Unless there is an objection, we will dispense with the reading of the special meeting notice. Dr. Smiley, can you please confirm that the public portion of this meeting is currently being live streamed?
Yes, it is.
Can you please monitor the live streaming throughout the public portion of this meeting? And if there is a problem, please speak it immediately so that we can address the technical difficulty.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. And just a reminder, community members are welcome to attend the Board of Education work sessions. However, there is not an opportunity to participate. That's all you folks. Okay, so we're going to turn over the meeting to Dr. Smiley to continue our discussion of building our future.
Thank you.
Welcome.
First, thanks for convening again. Thank you to Mr. Price. It's great to have you back. We
Thank you.
appreciate your presence and look forward to your participation. So last week, if we can think back, first we'll start with this report. Make sure that we are always improving student achievement, improving transparency, which I think, friends, this has been one of the most transparent processes. We have aired work sessions on Facebook. Folks can go back and see those meetings. We have had community input sessions. Those have been aired live. We have actually surveyed our community members. We've surveyed our parents. We've surveyed our staff. So the one piece that I really think we should never be criticized for, regardless of what our decision is, that type of mantra of, well, where did this come from? We really, I think, have made really borderline heroic efforts to be as transparent as possible in our thinking. And then finally, practicing fiscal responsibility. We talked somewhat about that today, although for the most part, we're focused on answering your questions. Tonight's goal is to provide further information about the 421 plan. If you remember last week, on March 17th, we had a work session where we strongly recommended the 421 model. We then met on Friday. Each of us met in person. And then I also talked to Mr. Price on the phone, gathered some questions, and tonight we will present answers to those questions. And hopefully that can further illuminate our thinking and help you to reach your decisions. Next week is our drop dead date. That is if we plan at all to even have a chance to go on November's ballot. And I know that's another conversation for another day, but if we do plan to go on November's ballot, we need to hand in a plan to the state that evening, really. So we don't have any give time after that. I will say also that there is some time allotted to a work session before that meeting. And just as a preview, GPD is drawing what a one campus can look like on the Parma Senior High campus. That was a request of several of you. They don't have that now. I called them Friday, we met Tuesday. They couldn't turn that around in 48 hours, but they will have it by Monday. So I will send that to you by Monday, and then we can certainly look at it on Thursday. I will tip my hat with this nugget of information though from Mark, who has really been the GPD liaison or key figure for us. Mark actually, when we talked about the Parma Senior High campus, his question wasn't, could we do it? His question was, do you want to keep the current Parma Senior High or not? Because that was going to impact their thinking. So that thought process clearly indicates that there's no problem with fitting it. The question was, do you want to fit it and not need swing space, so you're actually operating Parma Senior High at the same time? So clearly, they're going to accommodate it as well. Our challenge, and I know folks have had questions about access points, our challenge will be how exactly to best situate that, and I talked to GPD about that. I've also talked to Tim McGeeter. We will set up a meeting with the city folks and our folks once we have that plan from GPD to talk about where is the best access point and how can we make sure that we actually have, from our southern end, better access other than just through Parkview there. So very positive conversation with Tim. Certainly there's no promises. You know, Tim as a council himself, but both from the Mark at GPD and the city standpoint, both were really optimistic and thumbs up on moving forward with a process. Yes, ma'am.
Are we going to see both then, or did you give them one or the other?
Well, both is the same we had, so there's really no need to do anything different with that.
I mean, so they'll give us one that shows with Parma Senior High still standing?
Oh, I thought you meant
Sorry.
4-2.
Sorry, no.
Yeah. I told him to draw it the best way he felt made sense. I said that we've talked about the need for swing space, if that was a need, and so they were going to look at how it worked best.
Okay.
We certainly are able to access swing space if we needed to. So, a couple different questions that came up that I want to answer for you, and then certainly we'll take questions at the end if you have further questions. One was, I guess I don't really want to name folks, but one of you was very clear about saying we need to be able to explain why we changed. We are at a 6-2 plan, and now we would be going with a 4-2-1, and what's the rationale behind the change? And really a few points. And I think the first point is potentially most compelling. We lost twice, 54 to 46 and 63 to 37. And I know folks have said, well, we had 23,000 yes votes, and that's true. And so 23,000 folks were ready to say we will pay a higher tax rate for newer schools or new schools for our kids and for our community. 27,000 said no. So that is a cause for reflection. And as we reflected, and I think what you've seen in the Building Our Future process is that we've really come to the conclusion that a concentration of resources does make the most sense. You saw in our first meeting $1.8 million operating costs per high school that we can slash that are non-transfer costs. Those are things like maintenance and things like stipends for different extracurriculars, administrative costs that wouldn't have to be transferred. So that was before you look at any personnel, it was a $1.8 million operating savings when you close a high school. So that really, those points really caused us to say, it's that concentration of resources that we think is best. And the other piece is the community input. None of us here in the Parma City Schools fill out a single Google form. You guys didn't fill out single Google forms. And I know it wasn't a scientific survey, and I know that, potentially a scientific poll of 300 folks maybe could have gotten us another source of information. But the one piece of information I thought was most compelling and most clear was that community survey of 945 responses, where the only response from the community that was positive, that had more positives than negatives, was with the one high school model. And again, that's not us. And so I think sometimes folks say, well, the administration is really trying to be aggressive here. We believe we're reflecting A, what we need, and B, from what we can tell, what the community has really steered us toward. We also had a question about traveling distances. And I think this is relatively telling. We looked at some of this last time, actually. So up here, and just to go through, we looked at what would be the furthest points of travel, depending on where you were going to school, based on the two models. So for instance, if you were assigned to the West Campus, currently Valley Forge, so if we went ahead with the 4-2 model, the furthest you could possibly live from Valley Forge would be the northeast corner of the West District, which is Ridge and Brook Park. That's a 3.39 mile distance from Ridge and Brook Park heading to the West Campus. Same thing, again, if we go 4-2 and you're assigned to the East Campus, the furthest would also be Ridge and Brook Park, obviously on the other side of the street, right, the eastern side of the street. That's a 4.26 mile journey. Now when you put Parma Senior High, and that's the one high school, the farthest that you can travel is from the southeast corner of the district at Daniel Drive and Sprague Road, pretty far south. But notice that's actually shorter than the distance that we talked about from the northwest corner of the East District to Normandy. So, your distance is actually right in that same ballpark. The longest distance, but again, not dramatically different in terms of distance, was the southwest corner of the district, where, by the way, Mr. Christ lives. Didn't even realize that was still Parma. My gosh. Are we in Parma or are we in, Indiana? So, West 130th and Sprague would be your furthest corner if you were traveling to Parma Senior High, 4.41 miles. So, and by the way, that's as the crow flies, so to speak. That's who knows? Yeah, who knows what roads people necessarily want to travel. So, I think that's pretty interesting because when people say, well, kids are going to be traveling a lot further, it's really a misnomer. I mean, that essentially to me is a wash. I mean, the 339 is noticeably shorter, but the others are all really very, very similar.
For those were those boundaries, the streets you gave, the corner of Ridge and Brook Park, that's Parma, and don't we have to include Parma Heights?
Right, but that's if we divided, if we use that 4-2 division, was always going to be Ridge Road, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's the furthest, because Parma Heights is just going to travel straight up to Valley Forge. So the furthest would be that diagonal cut from the corner of Ridge and Brook Park to Valley Forge. Yeah, or, Ridge and Brook Park to Northview. Make sense?
And I would think this southwest corner of the district, I would think that would even be farther than the farthest point which way am I going, up towards Southland? I would still think
That
that's
looks confusing.
farther. So I think when you include Parma
To Valley
Heights.
Forge?
Yeah, I still think that's farther to Forge than if you come from the far corner up by Southland, which I can't remember what that is over there.
West 130th and
Pearl. West 130th and Pearl. I still think that's probably a little bit farther than that would. I think that would come up shorter, so I don't even think that would be as to your question, like the farthest corner.
No,
of
I
Heights.
misunderstood what he was talking about.
Oh, gotcha.
He split it in half and then went from the northeast corner and then the northwest corner, which makes sense.
Got it, okay.
That's-
Right, because
I just went with
that's how we,
names, trying to figure it out.
at least the boundary we projected last time was Ridge. So
I didn't pay
east and
attention to
west
the
campus.
northeast corner and northwest corner.
Okay.
Do you want us to, so you're talking about, you think the southwest corner would be further to Valley Forge than the?
Oh, yeah, I think that would be farther. Yeah.
Southwest corner?
So southwest would be farther to Forge than what we're talking about here from
That's
Ridge and
funny.
Brook Park?
Yeah, because you would cut, no, from, I was
Okay. All right,
thinking
then I'm
from,
misunderstanding.
yeah, no,
130th.
Can you put from the map?
100, I'm thinking, no, I was thinking, oh, I didn't even think it does, I was thinking Parma Heights. But is that
That's
Parma
the-
Heights?
That's Parma.
This is
Well,
further
130th
south,
and-
and, because remember Parma Heights just,
It's cut out.
yes.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking, that's what I was just thinking, that the Parma Heights corner that it was in my mind
Yeah.
would need to be reflected here.
We laid it down,
Because
looked at the
farthest.
districts and said, here's the furthest, here's the furthest, here's the two furthest.
Do we know what those times are? Like, could we,
We projected 45 minutes-ish at a maximum, which is not too different from what we're running now, which is 30 minutes, I think, at our maximum.
By bus, you mean?
Yeah.
That's what I was just.
But a lot of that's dependent on
That's like that.
how many buses we're running, what's our operating funds, how many bus stops do we want. So, I mean, it's not a scientific calculation there. I mean, it does include some estimate. And again, I would just echo, regardless of 4-2 or 4-1, which is really the only decision we have to make now, your distances are about the same.
I do have a bus question. Do we have to, since high school busing is not mandatory,
Correct.
do we have to adhere to the same rule that a bus stop can only be so far from a kid's home?
I don't know.
No?
That would be our choice.
Okay. That would make things a lot more efficient, I would think.
Cindy?
Well, I'm just guessing for interest's sake that Valley Forge on the far northern border of their, like Brook Park and 130th doesn't really count, that quadrant, because there's no housing there, between the Chevy plant and all the other industrial stuff that runs from Snow Road to Chevy Boulevard.
Just all of those apartments.
Well, those are on the,
Chevy Boulevard.
Chevy Boulevard.
Chevy Boulevard, there's apartments all
on
the
the
way.
east side, not on the west side, though.
No.
That west side corner that's bordered by.
Oh,
that's
where
all
Hannah is
industrial.
Snow.
Yeah, Hannah's,
Industrial.
and there's plenty of housing on that side.
Further.
But I'm talking west of Chevy Boulevard, south of Snow Road to 130th and Brook Park. There's no
Okay.
housing anywhere there. But Valley Forge does go all the way down to Brook Park. when
Yeah, all
you-
those apartments and stuff.
Yeah, when you're talking north of Hannah, there's a lot of housing there. And I'm just thinking, we're probably not real far from these numbers when you talk
I
that
agree.
distance, and also the far northeast corner of Seven Hills.
That's a good point.
That hits Cuyahoga Heights, those folks travel a long way to get to Normandy now, so we're probably not talking a whole big difference
Yeah.
of travel for some of our kids.
Yeah, no, and those are good points, and we can lay those out too if you wanted to see. We were just looking literally from the
20
furthest.
minutes.
furthest point.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
All right.
One of the questions was, would Pleasant Valley be better than Parma Parks for an elementary site? What you have up there is the map as we've laid out. A couple points that would really serve to reinforce our desire for Parma Park, but again, knowing that we can make a recommendation and the board certainly has to live with that or not. First, Pleasant Valley is much more lucrative on the open market. Pleasant Valley is worth $2.4 million. Parma Park's $400,000. Now, yes, we have carved out a little bit of a section because of the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, so it's not as large as the 2019 assessment did. By the way, this is before, obviously, property values have skyrocketed, and that'd be true for all of our campuses. So that is a 2019, and it's not 100% accurate.
So maybe what, like closer to 2 million?
Yeah, I mean, but then if you take escalating property values too, I mean, both of them would have escalated. But the point being that Pleasant Valley is a more lucrative sales piece to us. Steve?
Would we include in that package probably Arlington? Is that
Yeah,
Arlington?
yeah.
Which would take that whole group of them.
100%, yeah. I'll be very clear, and again, understanding it's my role to make recommendations and the board to accept them or not. I really believe we should protect the tax base in Parma Heights. I met with Mayor Gallo today. Her one request all the way through has been, please keep me at least whole property tax wise. And then today she also brought up, realize that Parma Park already lost Pearl Road Elementary. Can you not kick us in the face twice? And Parma Heights has been, you saw the numbers in the one presentation. It's been as loyal of a base as we have. So right now in Parma Heights we have 1,647 students, and obviously that's Parma Park plus Valley Forge. If we went 421, bumps it up to 2018 students. If we went 421 but we moved Parma Park to Pleasant Valley, it takes it down to 1223. So 1647, you're losing about a quarter of that down to 1223. Then the question was, well, can't you just move central office? But the projected payroll of Parma Park is about 5.4 million. The central office payroll is 5.4 million or 4.5 million. So you're still not 100% offsetting that loss by moving central office there. So.
But you've lost a lot in Parma also.
We have. Yeah, we have.
A considerable amount in Parma with whatever plan goes, because Seven Hills picks up quite a lot.
Seven Hills is.
So there's no way to be fully equitable.
There isn't.
Did you calculate if the board offices were at Forge and no Parma Park, what the base is? That what that number is? The 4.5 versus 4.54. Like what if?
Right, it's $1 million shortfall.
Even without Parma Park, with the board offices there, it's $1 million.
You're still 900,000 short.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that will matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, we just explained, that's the payroll, we have it there, that's not the tax.
Yeah, thank you, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's just their
By the
income,
tax rate.
the income that they would be
Thank
taxing.
you for that.
So my recommendation is still to keep Parma Park. That's my personal feel, and again, I just have to be honest, a lot of that's sentimental and what Parma Heights can mean to us. I mean, I sat with the mayor today, and she, wants it on the ballot, which I know, again, isn't tonight's discussion, I'm just relaying, the conversation we had. She wants it on the ballot, and she says, me and 5 council people are ready to drop a lid for you. So that's where they're at. I mean, I love hearing that. Yes, a supporter, a powerful supporter. Let's use that synergy.
My discussions with her are the same thing. Same thing. They're with us. They're with us. They're strong with us. They're not just going to say vote yes. They're going to go out and work for us, and they're going to put their backs into it. And I believe that we should keep them whole. They've been as a community, not just recently, but as a community, they've been very loyal to the Parma School District over the years in levies, and I think that we should keep them whole.
So that's our recommendation, but again, knowing that it's ultimately the board's decision and respecting that. We had a couple questions. We had one question about grade band and the location of 5th grade. So Mrs. Strappa was going to talk to us about the numbers behind our recommendation that we go 5th through 8th, but also the educational implications of that.
First
Lisa.
you. So we saw this slide.
Thank you.
So we saw this slide last time. And the recommendation we have is that 5th grade remains at the middle school. And I want to explain the why behind that because I think it's important. In 2012, 2013 is when we went from 7-8 to 5-6-7. I was the building principal that first year at Hillside. I worked alongside with 2 of my colleagues, and at the time it was Ed Vitardi, who was the superintendent of North Royalton. And we used the research from This We Believe, and it's the biggest educational research from the National Middle School Association. And that research still holds true. And so when you look at the enrollment, and I'll get into the research in a second, when we keep 5th grade at the middle school, which is a huge belief system, not only for the whole child concept, which I'll get into, but also our curriculum, we go with that natural progression of our elementary enrollment being a little bit larger to our middle school enrollment. Our elementary enrollment being a lot smaller to our higher middle school enrollment. I spoke with, did I say that right, Dr. Smiley?
Yeah.
I feel like I said that wrong. I spoke with the principal from Berea today, and he mentioned to me that there's 1,700 kids at Berea Middle School. It's an older building in which they were able to create sections for each grade level, having that teaming concept. And so here's the research. So the Association for our Middle School Level Education recommends that we integrate team teaching, which we currently have in practice. And if you remember any of my presentations, I shared that the middle school gem is our teaming. Our kids have 88-minute blocks in their core, and then they're able to go into encore and that exploration component of electives. There's limited transitions with those blocks. We provide access to comprehensive counseling. So we have counseling at the middle school level with our 5th graders. And this is for students aged 10 to 15. And this is research that began in 1982. And this same research was just republished January 18th of 2021. And so our 10 to 15-year-olds, and this is the brain and how it works, is that they make critical and complex life choices. They form attitudes, values, and dispositions that will direct their behavior as young adults. And so part of this research is really looking at being developmentally responsible, challenging, empowering, and equitable, all of which is how our scheduling components and our blocks are set up currently at the middle school level. I would hate to see our kids go back, quite honestly, backwards in time to elementary with 5th graders in our elementary buildings. I would love to keep the concept of our middle school at middle school with our grade bands of 5, 6, 7, 8. The last thing I want to share with you is currently when our young teachers are graduating, licensure is a 4 through 9. That's huge because where our curriculum shifts is from the foundational components to more of the content. And so what ends up happening is if we have 5th grade down at the elementary, it's really hard to get those middle school licensures because we also have to departmentalize at the elementary level. And a lot of times what departmentalizing looks like if 5th grade is at elementary is they have to teach social studies and English together and science and math together. And sometimes our licensures are not structured that way. And so we're moving from that 1-8 licensure or that K-8 licensure away from how our kids and our young adults are coming out in terms of their licensures with our universities. So I wanted to share this. This research is really the premise of why we went 5, 6, 7. It's really why we have the scheduling that we have now. There can be adjustments to that schedule, but the heart of that schedule is the extra time in our core curriculum, that time where they have that dedicated time for no new instruction or enrichment. And then our kids are, throughout the wheel with the Encore and also Learning Lab, where a lot of that career exploration goes. And I feel like we would be doing a disservice to our fifth grade students if we moved them to the elementary. So I wanted to share that research with you.
Dr. Snyder's up next. A couple different questions.
Mrs. Stropko, what is the licensure for early elementary? What is that?
Pre-K, so it's preschool, kindergarten, like combined through third grade.
Do we have trouble hitting that fourth grade, filling that fourth grade licensure situation?
So it's either pre-K or it's a 1-8 or a K-8, and a lot of times our pre-K 3 will get a 4 or 5 endorsement. So they walk away with that. So no, it's not really that hard. Right.
Okay, a few slides to follow up on other questions that came out of the most recent work session. One of the questions was the ratios for the custodial staff in the 4-2 and the 4-2-1 model. So I tried to lay that out here. Elementary head custodian moving across the middle school and high school. And I will say that in terms of the staffing of custodial employees in the 4-2 and the 4-2-1 model went a little heavier than what we have right now. I saw it as an opportunity where we save money, but also have more at the building level than we do today. So that honestly could be dialed down a little bit, especially in terms of the M1s and the M2s, which is our entry-level positions in the maintenance department, even though they're actually at the buildings all day long. Those are definitely heavier than they are currently. On the cleaners side, we're a little lighter. Again, we could dial one up and one down, depending on where we need to be, but this is a really healthy staffing at the building level in both models. So currently, our custodial costs, and that includes our custodians, our assistant custodians, the M1s or M2s that are at the building all day long. They don't go to Arlington as part of the maintenance department. And then also our cleaners. That comes out to just over $2 million in our current 833 model. So you can see there that the 4-2 model is estimated to be about $1.6 million. The 4-2-1 model, about $36,000 more, 1.645. So again, for context, in response to the question that came out last week, they both offer savings of roughly $400,000. The 4-2 model is slightly less expensive than the 4-2.
I love this because people ask, gearing up for potential campaign questions. Well, you can't take care of the buildings you have now. Why would we give you, money to build new ones? I mean, this is a perfect example of, he said, we can go heavier on staffing than we do right now in terms of ratios and numbers of people per square feet and still save about $400,000 there. And maintenance, I mean, we have 6, right?
Yeah, the other piece which I think is important about that, when you're talking about the ratios and the costs overall, in terms of custodial and Arlington and the maintenance department, we had talked before at length, and I shared the table with you, that we have 6 members of the maintenance department for 15 buildings. And if you're thinking about having 6 members of the maintenance department for 6 buildings or 7 buildings, I mean, that's obviously just a huge upgrade in terms of the efficiencies that we would experience. So that's just an upgrade through and through in terms of the question that came up, and it's a fair question. Would you be able to take care of newer buildings better than you take care of your current ones? And the answer is absolutely yes. Just for context, the elementary schools, and we're talking about larger elementary schools, but currently we have an elementary custodian, and that's it. The building during the day. These are staffed with an elementary head custodian, an assistant custodian, and an M1 laborer at each elementary school. So significantly more staff than they experience right now.
That's what I was wondering, with larger buildings, would we require, more staffing to care for that larger space? Because that would seem to, make sense to me anyway, I don't know, but, so that answers that.
I definitely didn't think it was going to be at a savings, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's the one catch on this that I was not prepared for.
Yeah, and it's really just the economies of scale. That's the efficiencies part that we talked about. When you start to combine the resources, you're more efficient.
Fewer is better.
Yeah. The other question that had come up was in regard to, as an example, teaching staff that would be required for our freshman students. So this shows the number of teachers in a 4-2 model and then a 4-2-1 model. So if you're at the two secondary campuses, you're taking your 747 ninth grade students, and obviously you're splitting them into two campuses. So we looked at how you would staff that in the ninth grade teaming concept. Because again, we had talked about pods of teaming at ninth grade and also potentially at the 10th grade. So in a 4-2 model, with 373 ninth graders at each building. That equates to 6 teachers for each core subject. So 6 teachers for English, 6 for math, 6 for science, 6 for social studies. Total between those two buildings. So then you also have 8 intervention specialists across the two buildings for all of the freshmen. That's 4 at each high school. You have 8, quote, specialist teachers, art, music, and PE. So you have 4 at each high school. So to staff the ninth grade in the 4-2 model, 40 teachers. The 4-2-1 model, again, and this is just in terms of the efficiency, and when you have larger numbers and you're talking about staffing and advisors, that's when you start to see some of the savings come in. So the 4-2-1 model with all the ninth graders in one place, you're talking about 5 teachers for each one of those core subjects. That's 25 students per class. 7 intervention specialists, 6 specialist teachers. So you would need only 33 teachers. And that roughly, the estimate is $60,000 per teacher. That's a difference of, you can see it's either 2.4 million in the 4-2 model or 1.98 million in the 4-2 model. Again, combining larger numbers are always better in terms of divisors. And that goes back to some of the comments that we read in the surveys and then that people have asked. It didn't come from the board directly, but people have asked, or commented that when you go to these big schools, you're going to have big classes. Again, not exactly sure where that comes from, but that's absolutely not the case. Larger school does not mean larger classes. It actually gives you a chance to really hit closer to the mark of what your goal is for class sizes. And at 747 ninth graders, it works out almost perfectly at 24.98 students per class. Obviously, there's going to be variations with honors and AP, depending on who signs up for what. But the class sizes will not, absolutely not be larger than they are currently. But they have been historically. We have kind of an ESSER impact this year. Historically, our numbers would be better.
Dr. Schneider, you were able to give an estimate of class size in the one model, but not on the other.
Yeah.
And how come?
Or
what did?
It depends on how you look at it. So that's where the division, when you're using smaller numbers, is less favorable. So the class sizes, if you go with 5 teachers, it's 31. If you go with 6 teachers, it's 20. It's 20.8. So then you're talking about splitting teacher schedules, and they're going to do 9th grade classes, but they're going to have some 10th grade classes, and it doesn't work as well. And not to get too far off track, but I mean, that's some of the issues that we have with, we talked about some of the niche courses, some of the upper level courses, but also you see at some of our smaller elementary schools, when you're talking about a small grade, like a first grade class that's small, at Renwood or Parma Park, it's hard to get the class size where you want it because the alternatives are 17 or 31. You're not, you want to be, right, you hope to be 22, 24, but you can't really get that because the math just doesn't work as well when you're dealing with smaller numbers.
Did you sorry.
No, you're okay.
Did you factor in the aides and monitors in this configuration?
I apologize. You lost me a little bit. So what would be the average class size at the 4-2 model?
You really, it's difficult.
You can't?
So
You don't
Higher,
have-
lower?
what I would say is it would turn out to be about the same, but
Okay.
it's not going to be as efficient because we're going to try and pull some of their schedule out, like a piece of their schedule, 1 or 2
Gotcha.
periods to cover.
So we couldn't remain as efficient consistently, but okay, that's what I thought, but I just.
No, I didn't say a number specifically. You didn't lose anything.
Okay.
I didn't say it.
I wonder. Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
So you could still, you could try and divide it out to still get to that mid-20s, but it doesn't fit in terms of a full FTE. And if you're trying to team, right, you want the full FTE. That's what we do at the middle school.
So I have one more question.
Yeah.
In the interest of all things being awesome for kids, that's just about a $400,000 difference. You could even have lower student ratios if we took like a net wash on the maintenance side, right? So like we could have, that would be an area where we could keep that potentially.
Sort of depends on the teaming too, though.
But I mean, if you needed to add a couple more, maybe in the special, like, I mean, there would be some playroom where it wouldn't cost us any more money. We would have some playroom there to.
I think it goes back to what we had talked about quite a bit early on, in that when we were trying to translate models, whether it's 4.2 or 4.2.1, we're trying to keep the services the same to show the potential cost difference, and that's where we talked about the savings for closing, high school or middle school or this model, and then the conversation is what do we collectively want to do with that cost savings. So it could be, obviously, I hope at least a piece of that, and we could still save money, is better coverage for maintenance and cleaning. And a piece of that could be a class size consideration. Obviously, busing has been the consistent theme and feedback from the person. All right, the last one that I have, question was in regard to this building site and elementary site of either John Muir or Shiloh, and which one would be more appropriate for fairly large elementary school. So in terms of what the properties offer, John Muir is 11.1 acres, 650 feet of frontage. Shiloh is a little bit bigger in acreage, at 15. The frontage is pretty much the same. So on this slide, I was really trying to zero in on the traffic pattern piece, because obviously that's important, and a lot of people ask about that. So there could be disagreement in terms of what people think the advantages of one versus the other could be based on the roads that lead into or out of those properties. I would just, as a reminder, say that we could do an absolutely fantastic job of traffic at either site. I think it's going to be a significant upgrade regardless if it's in Shiloh or John Muir. Having said that, I do recommend John Muir as a site. A couple considerations that play into that. One, the John Muir property is closer to the district boundary, which means that we exclude fewer children from transportation, because that 2-mile radius extends out of the district on the northeast side. And Shiloh is pulled in a little bit, you don't have as much of that. Really, though, I think the significant difference is that even though John Muir truly was made as a neighborhood school with a lot of walkers and it's tucked back in there really nicely in that neighborhood, you have Fortune and you have Torrington that both go to West 24th Street, and you can get to that district property, potentially, not currently, but potentially from both of those roads. So just kind of thinking about what that could look like. Fortune, as an example, could be for buses only. So we've talked about bringing the buses in on the edge and then bringing them to the front of the property and then having that as your staging area. And then they would obviously go out and turn north onto West 24th Street, and you get the stop sign, and you can go east or west and get to stay on the road. We're separating the buses with families vehicle traffic. So Torrington could be for families only, and then you're using 2 side streets for that traffic that potentially spills out into the side streets, which we very much want to avoid. And I think that we can do a good job of that at either site. The difference being that if you use Shiloh and the traffic spills out on Grantwood, the only place that it can go is Grantwood. That's it.
Grantwood's
That's it. And if it starts to
one lake, one bridge across the ravine.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
There's no other options.
Yes.
So if we do spill out onto Grantwood, then you can only get to it from Broadview, and that's not ideal. That's not efficient at all in terms of trying to time up the buses. If we use one, going back to John Muir, if we use one of the side streets for buses only, then you bring them in and give them space on the property. Use one for families only, and you bring them in. I've talked about using the back of the building as opposed to the front, so you can get 150-ish cars onto the district property. They would then probably all have to use the same exit, but you funnel everybody out right. Everybody goes right. Everybody goes right. And then you get to that stop sign and make your choice. So that would be some considerations in terms of those 2 properties.
My memory is failing me. Is John Muir the one of our schools that's technically operated backwards, like the front of it's in the back?
Yes. Yeah.
So in that, because I can't remember what the streets are around it, are you saying that the traffic would come in from what's the back of the school now?
From the west. So the school, the property is situated,
Sorry.
so if this is John Muir, Broadview is going to be way over here, State's going to be way over here. You have Fortune and you have Torrington that come in from the west.
Okay.
And then West 24th runs north-south.
So there's
the-
just not access over there because the trees.
There's not
and
currently, there's a park, the old basketball courts
Yep.
there. And if we were to maintain John Muir long-term, I'd still like to use that potential entryway because that can alleviate a lot of the frustrations that we have. But the other issue with where John Muir is situated is that it's actually really close to the property line. On the southern edge, and what we've talked about in some of our configurations is pulling it more to the middle, so then you have that loop that goes around the building, whether it's for buses and/or family cars. So you just push the building north a little bit, probably to the east a little bit. There's a nice big field there. You can get around it with your cars, and then you're opening up more lanes for the parents who want to wait to pick up and drop off their students.
Grantwood is also no joke. Count them, 6 times my mirror was hit on my driver's side when I was parked there waiting for Brady to come out of school. 6 times over 2 years. It's just, it's too narrow, and the hills, people slow down to watch the kids, and somebody's trying to come around another car, putting somebody in the car, and they don't, it's too narrow.
24th, even worse. It's even more.
So, and we'll take any questions, but just in terms of looking forward, that's this evening. Remember, we have March Madness, essentially, we're trying to wrap up here. We're almost there. We do, next week, the question was, do we need a board work session? And I think since it'll be the first time we can really look at what these models look like, I think that's a good time to do that before the work session, or before the actual meeting where you will be voting to see it. Again, as soon as I get those renderings, we'll get them to you. The one piece that I wanted to mention, and this was a conversation that Carl and I had, there's been a good amount of concern about traffic and parking on that Parma Senior High lot. GPD doesn't share those concerns. However, in terms of us sort of honoring those concerns, we thought it made sense to move ACE's central office and maintenance now to Normandy. We had all of those at Parma Senior High in the 421 model. So given the concerns about traffic, let's minimize that. Let's minimize the folks that are trying to get in and out. Normandy also retains those in terms of a Parma tax base, so that they're not also losing that. Because again, as Mrs. Broad, you indicated before, both Seven Hills and Parma Heights are winning in terms of kids that are attending school, in their cities, which means staff goes up. So let's keep those other more centralized functions in Parma itself. And then, quite frankly, next week would be a vote. So questions, things that we can continue to work on other than the visual piece?
So that means we can't sell Normandy's property if we had done this?
Normandy was going to be in middle school.
Oh, that's right, never mind. Totally just, I was thinking 411 for a hot
Which
second.
would be tough to sell. No. Yeah.
Listen,
All right, so.
these numbers are getting to me. Oh my God.
All right, so, well, to me, I'm having these final questions answered, it seemed that the model that seems most beneficial to the students, to me, in my mind, in my educational twist or things, really is this 421. That seems to be the most beneficial to our students as far as class offerings, limiting the number of changing buildings from one year to another year. I like the banding. I think that banding is great, that K4, 5, 8, and 9 to 12. And I think that just kind of leads everybody into one really holistic, I don't know if holistic is the right word, but it should bring the communities together.
An all-in model.
Instead of separating them. Still, having east-west. Well, I like the 4-2, I like that concept, and I like the 6-2-4. This, probably should have thought of this before. But it's always hindsight, right? So I like that. I like this. I think this is probably is the best for kids.
It's still a tough decision, and we still respect. If there's questions over the weekend, please text. I'm accessible. We're happy to get some time that you have everything. Because ultimately Thursday has to kind of be it. Jack?
Right.
I like the 421 plan. I think it's fiscally responsible. I still think we're servicing our children in the same way we are now, even better. I'm 100% for it, and we'll support you on it.
Just as a side note, do you know what the grade bands are of, like, other, like Brunswick, North Royalton, Strongsville, what those grade bands?
Berea for sure was 5.8. I
I
can't.
don't know Brunswick. We'd have to look.
We can get those then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious as to how, you
Yeah.
know, because I know some do K4, some, you know, some do K5, some, I was just curious as to what.
I'll be honest, I'm
About every
very-
grade band you're looking for.
Right, but, I like to always compare us to somebody's doing something, you know, they're more successful than us, so what are they doing and what can we model? And if a school district is, you know, doing much better than us on their scores and all that, is there something that we're doing that we can emulate to help our students? So it's just,
I'm surprised at how many kids in Berea Mid-Park High School, or middle school. Is it Berea Mid-Park Middle School or just Berea? It's Berea Mid-Park Middle School, isn't it? I didn't realize it was 1,700 deep.
That's the old Mid-Park High School.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Mrs. Bratz, anything else you'd like us to look into, or, you know, you're ready for those drawings?
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing the drawings, and I still am, you know, thinking the same things that I was thinking before.
Sure.
So, asked a couple questions here about the presentation, and I can't think of anything else that we haven't already discussed.
Sure.
Thank you, though.
Everybody's good? Wow. That was easy.
It's like we haven't even started yet, guys.
You
Come on
got somewhere to
now.
be.
I didn't even break a sweat.
So, all right, well, we'll save that spot for Thursday.
Well, let me see what I can think of to get you rolling here.
Okay. So, well, then, since that's where we're wrapped up there and everybody's had their piece, I said I move to adopt resolution 2022-03-96 to adjourn this meeting.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2022-03-96. Roll call, please, Mr. Nucio.
Mr. Vaughn,
Yes.
Mrs. Carpus,
Yes.
Mrs. Bratz,
Yes.
Mr. Kreis,
Yes.
Mr. Ruda.
yes.
Meeting adjourned.